The November rain came down in cold, persistent sheets across Brooklyn, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected the amber glow of streetlights. It was the kind of evening that made people walk faster, hunching their shoulders against the chill, eager to get home to warmth and dinner. But for Sarah Mitchell, home was still hours away. She stood behind the counter of Tony's Diner, a chrome and vinyl establishment that had occupied the corner of Fifth Avenue and Union Street since 1967. The smell of coffee, bacon grease, and pie filled the air, a comfort to some, a reminder of endless shifts to Sarah. She wiped down the Formica counter for what felt like the 100th time that day, her reflection staring back at her from its glossy surface. At 28, she looked tired, not just end-of-shift tired, but the kind of exhaustion that settled into bones and stayed there. "Table 6 needs a refill," barked Tony Castellano from the kitchen window. He was a thick-set man in his 60s with permanent sweat stains under his arms and a voice that could cut through the dinner rush chaos. "And someone's been nursing that coffee for 40 minutes. Either they order food or they move along." "Got it, Tony," Sarah called back, grabbing the coffee pot. Her feet ached in her worn-out sneakers, the same pair she'd been meaning to replace for 3 months. But sneakers cost money, and money went to rent, utilities, and Emma's medical bills. Always the medical bills. She made her rounds with practiced efficiency, smiling at regulars, making small talk with the construction workers who came in after their shifts. This was her second job. During the day, she worked as a receptionist at a dental office in Park Slope. 2 jobs meant she could almost keep her head above water. Almost. "Hey Sarah, you got a kid, right?" asked Dennis, one of the regulars, a postal worker with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard. "Yeah, Emma. She just turned 6. Sarah replied, topping off his cup. "She doing okay? I remember you mentioned she was sick." Sarah's smile tightened just slightly. "She's hanging in there. Asthma and some immune system issues. We're managing." What she didn't say was that managing meant choosing between the name-brand medication and the generic that didn't work quite as well. It meant keeping their apartment at 62 degrees because heating oil was expensive. It meant Emma spending after-school hours with Mrs. Chen next door because childcare was impossible to afford. "You're doing a great job," Dennis said warmly. "That girl's lucky to have you." Sarah nodded her thanks, blinking back the sudden sting in her eyes. Kindness could undo her faster than cruelty. The dinner rush tapered off around 7:30, leaving only a handful of diners scattered across the booths. Sarah was counting her tips. $43, not bad for a Tuesday, when something outside caught her attention. Through the rain-streaked window, illuminated by the diner's neon sign, she saw a small figure sitting on the green bench across the street. A child. A boy, she thought, though it was hard to tell through the rain. He was alone. Sarah frowned, glancing around the diner. No one seemed to be missing a kid. No frantic parents searching or calling out. She looked back outside. The boy hadn't moved. He just sat there, his dark hair plastered to his head, his small shoulders hunched against the cold. "Tony, do you see that?" she asked, pointing. Tony barely glanced up from the grill. "See what?" "That kid outside, on the bench. He's been there for at least 10 minutes. "Not our problem," Tony said flatly. "Kid's probably waiting for his parents. Don't get involved." But Sarah couldn't look away. The boy wore what looked like an expensive jacket, navy blue with some kind of insignia, but he was soaked through. His pants were dark, possibly dress pants, and his shoes looked like leather, not sneakers. Everything about him said, well cared for, except for the fact that he was sitting alone in the rain. "I'm just going to check on him," Sarah said, untying her apron. "Sarah, no," Tony warned. "You start feeding every stray that wanders by. We'll have a line around the block. This is a business. I'm not going to feed him. I'm just going to make sure he's okay." Tony muttered something in Italian that Sarah chose not to understand. She grabbed one of the diner's cheap umbrellas from the stand by the door and pushed outside. The cold hit her immediately. The temperature had dropped with the rain and her thin uniform offered no protection. She hurried across the wet street, her sneakers splashing through puddles. "Hey, sweetie," she called softly as she approached the bench. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up and Sarah's heart clenched. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. His face was pale, his dark eyes enormous in his small face. He had delicate features, the kind that would probably make him handsome when he grew up. But right now he just looked lost and frightened. "Are you waiting for someone?" Sarah asked, opening the umbrella over both of them. The boy stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. Are you lost? Another pause, then a small nod. Sarah crouched down to his level, ignoring the cold water seeping through her uniform pants. What's your name? Marco, he whispered. His voice carried a slight accent. Italian maybe, or at least Italian-influenced. Hi, Marco. I'm Sarah. Where are your parents? Marco's face crumpled slightly, and for a moment Sarah thought he might cry. Instead, he pressed his lips together and looked down at his hands. It's okay, Sarah said gently. You don't have to tell me, but you're soaking wet and it's cold. Have you eaten? Marco shook his head again. Sarah made a decision. Come on, let's get you inside where it's warm. We can figure out what to do from there, okay? Marco hesitated, his eyes darting down the street as if checking for something, or someone. Then he nodded and stood up. He was small for his age, Sarah noticed. Thin but not malnourished. His clothes, despite being drenched, were clearly expensive. The jacket had a designer label. The shoes were Italian leather. She led him across the street and into the diner. The warmth hit them both, and Marco shivered violently. Oh, honey, Sarah murmured. She grabbed a stack of paper napkins from the dispenser and handed them to him. Dry off as best you can. Tony appeared at the kitchen window, his face darkening when he saw Marco. Sarah, what did I tell you? He's just a kid, Tony. He's freezing and hungry. I'm going to make him a sandwich and call... She paused. Call who? The police? Something about that idea made her uneasy, especially given the fear she'd seen in Marco's eyes. Make it fast, Tony grumbled. And he eats in the back booth. I don't want other customers thinking we're running a charity. Sarah bit back a retort. She needed this job too much to argue. Instead, she guided Marco to the last booth in the corner, the one partially hidden by a divider. He slid onto the cracked red vinyl seat, still shivering. What do you like to eat? Sarah asked, sitting across from him. Marco shrugged, not meeting her eyes. Okay, how about this? I make a really good grilled cheese sandwich, and I can get you some tomato soup. Does that sound good? A tiny nod. Great. And hot chocolate? For the first time, something flickered across Marco's face. Not quite a smile, but something close to interest. Yes, please. Coming right up. Sarah went behind the counter and got to work. She buttered the bread carefully, added extra cheese, the good cheddar, not the processed stuff, and grilled it until it was golden brown. She ladled out soup from the pot on the stove, making sure it was hot but not scalding, and she made the hot chocolate from scratch, the way her mother had taught her, with real cocoa powder and a touch of vanilla. As she worked, she watched Marco in the reflection of the steel appliances. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table. His posture was oddly formal for a child, back straight, chin level. He didn't fidget or look around curiously the way most kids would. Instead, he stared at his hands with an intensity that seemed wrong for someone so young. Sarah noticed something else too. On his left wrist, just visible below his jacket sleeve, was a red mark. Not a bruise exactly, but the kind of mark that came from something tight, like a rope or a zip tie or a restraint of some kind. Her stomach knotted. What had happened to this child? She brought the food over on a tray, setting it down carefully. Here you go. Careful, the soup is hot. Marco looked up at her, and for a moment something raw and vulnerable crossed his face. Thank you, he whispered, his accent more pronounced. You're welcome, sweetheart. Sarah slid into the booth across from him again. She should probably get back to work. There were still tables to clean, ketchup bottles to refill, but something kept her there. Maybe it was the way Marco picked up the sandwich with both hands, so carefully as if he were handling something precious. Or maybe it was the way his eyes closed when he took the first bite, a look of pure relief washing over his features. Is it good? She asked. Marco nodded, chewing slowly. When he swallowed, he said, My mama used to make grilled cheese before. Before? Sarah prompted gently. Marco's face shuddered. He took another bite, not answering. Sarah didn't push. Instead, she said, I have a daughter. Her name is Emma. She's 6. She loves grilled cheese too, especially with tomato soup. Where is she? Marco asked, his voice barely audible. At home with our neighbor. She's not feeling well today. Is she sick? Yeah, she has asthma and some other stuff. But she's tough. She's going to be fine. Marco nodded seriously, as if he understood something about sickness and worry. He dipped his sandwich in the soup, the way Sarah had shown Emma to do, and took another bite. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows. The diner's old fluorescent lights hummed overhead. From the kitchen came the sounds of Tony cleaning the grill, the scrape of metal on metal. "Marco," Sarah said eventually, "I need to know, is someone looking for you? Someone who cares about you?" Marco's hand tightened on his spoon. After a long moment he nodded. "Are you scared of them?" His eyes met hers, and in them, Sarah saw something complicated. Not simple fear, but a mixture of emotions she couldn't quite read. "I'm not scared of my papa," he said quietly, "but I'm scared of going back." "Why?" Marco shook his head. "It's lonely there. Everyone watches me all the time. I can't have friends, I can't go to regular school, I can't—" He trailed off, his voice cracking. "I can't be normal." Sarah's heart ached. She'd heard that note before, in her own voice, late at night, when she tallied up bills and wondered how she'd make it work. Different circumstances, same feeling of being trapped. "I just wanted one day," Marco continued, his words tumbling out now. "One day to be like other kids. So I ran when they weren't looking. I got on the subway. I didn't know where to go, I just wanted to feel different." "And did you? Feel different?" Marco considered this. "It was scary, but yes, free." Sarah reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "Marco, your papa, whoever is looking for you, they're probably terrified right now. Whatever problems there are at home, I promise they're not worth him thinking something bad happened to you." "You don't understand," Marco said, pulling his hand back. "My papa he's not like other papas." "How so?" But Marco just shook his head, retreating back into silence. He finished his sandwich and soup, drank his hot chocolate down to the last drop. The sugar and warmth seemed to revive him a little. Some color returned to his cheeks. Sarah was trying to figure out what to do next when the door to the diner opened, bringing in a gust of cold air. Two men entered, and immediately, Sarah's instincts fired off warning signals. They were both in their 30s, wearing dark suits under long wool coats. One was tall and broad-shouldered with a shaved head. The other was leaner, with slicked-back dark hair and sharp features. They moved with a kind of controlled purpose that made Sarah think of predators. Not aggressive, but undeniably dangerous. Marco saw them too. He went completely still, his face draining of what little color he'd gained. He slid down in the booth, trying to make himself smaller. "Stay calm," Sarah whispered. "Stay right here." She stood up and walked toward the men, positioning herself between them and Marco's booth. "Hi there. Can I help you, gentlemen?" The bald one spoke first. His voice was surprisingly soft. "We're looking for someone. A boy, about 8 or 9 years old. Dark hair, might be lost or confused. Lots of kids around here," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "What makes you think he'd be in a diner?" "We have reason to believe he might be," the lean one said. His eyes were sharp, scanning the diner. They lingered on the back booth, even though the divider blocked most of the view. "Have you seen anyone matching that description?" "Not today," Sarah lied. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of dealing with difficult customers had taught her how to mask her emotions. The bald man pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "If you do see him, we'd appreciate a call. It's very important. The boy's family is worried." Sarah looked at the card. It was simple, expensive-looking cardstock with raised lettering. Vincent Romano Enterprises private number. There was no address, just a phone number. "I'll keep an eye out," Sarah said, pocketing the card. The two men lingered for another moment, their eyes sweeping the diner one more time. Then, with a nod to Sarah, they left. Sarah waited until their dark car, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, pulled away from the curb before she returned to Marco's booth. The boy was trembling. "It's okay," she said softly. "They're gone. They'll come back," Marco whispered. "They always find me." Sarah looked at the business card again. Vincent Romano. The name tickled something in her memory, something she'd heard on the news or read in the paper. Romano Enterprises. What kind of enterprises? "Marco, is Vincent Romano your father?" The boy nodded miserably. Sarah pulled out her phone and quickly searched the name. The results made her stomach drop. Vincent Romano wasn't just a businessman. According to several news articles, he was a suspected organized crime figure, linked to various enterprises of questionable legality in Brooklyn and Manhattan. The articles were careful with their language, no outright accusations, probably for legal reasons, but the implication was clear. Marco's father was involved in organized crime. Sarah sat down hard in the booth, her mind racing. This was so far beyond anything she was equipped to handle. She should call the number on the card right now, return Marco to his father, and walk away. But when she looked at the boy's face, at the fear and loneliness etched there, She couldn't make herself do it. "Marco, listen to me," she said, taking his small hands in hers. "I don't know your whole story, but I can see that you're hurting, and I can see that you're scared. Whatever's going on, whatever your home life is like, running away isn't going to fix it." "I know," Marco said, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. "But I don't know what else to do. Papa is always busy, always working, always worried about people trying to hurt us. I have guards all the time. I can't go anywhere or do anything. My mama understood, but she's gone now, and I'm just alone all the time." Sarah's heart broke. Here was a child who had everything money could buy, and nothing that actually mattered. She thought about Emma, who never complained about their cramped apartment or the fact that they couldn't afford cable TV. Emma, who was rich in love, even if they were poor in everything else. "Okay," Sarah said, making another decision that was probably stupid but felt necessary. "Here's what we're going to do. My shift ends in an hour. You're going to stay right here with me until then. Then we're going to my apartment. You'll stay the night. Get some rest. Tomorrow morning I'll call your father and we'll figure this out together. But tonight you get to be a normal kid. Deal?" Marco looked at her with such hope that Sarah almost regretted the promise. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, but she'd been that lonely kid once before her mother found stable work, before things got better. She remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to wonder if anyone would notice if you disappeared. "Deal," Marco whispered. "Okay, but you have to stay in this booth and stay quiet, all right? My boss is already annoyed with me." Marco nodded and settled back into the vinyl seat. Sarah returned to her work, though her hands shook as she wiped down tables and refilled salt shakers. She kept glancing at the windows, watching for the black SUV to return. The rest of her shift crawled by. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped. But it was only regular customers. Mrs. Patterson picking up her usual Tuesday night dinner order, young couples on dates, a delivery driver grabbing coffee. Finally, mercifully, 9 o'clock arrived. Sarah clocked out, grabbed her coat and bag, and collected Marco from the booth. "Keep your hood up," she told him as they stepped outside. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but the cold had intensified. Their breath misted in the air. They walked 3 blocks to Sarah's building, a weathered brownstone that had been divided into 8 small apartments. Sarah lived on the 3rd floor in a 1-bedroom that she and Emma shared. It wasn't much, but it was clean and safe. "Mrs. Chen?" Sarah called, knocking on her neighbor's door. An elderly Chinese woman opened the door, her face crinkling into a smile when she saw Sarah. Then her eyes dropped to Marco, and confusion flickered across her features. "Sarah? Who is this?" "Long story, Mrs. Chen. How's Emma?" "Sleeping now. She had good dinner, soup and rice, breathing okay tonight." "Thank you so much. I'll get her." Mrs. Chen's apartment was warm and smelled like ginger and star anise. Emma was curled up on the couch under a blanket, her small chest rising and falling evenly. Sarah's heart squeezed with love. Her daughter's blonde hair was tangled, her cheeks flushed with sleep. She looked so small, so vulnerable. "Baby," Sarah whispered, gently shaking Emma's shoulder. "Time to go home." Emma's eyes fluttered open. They were the same green as Sarah's. "Mama?" "Yeah, baby, come on." Emma sat up, rubbing her eyes. Then she noticed Marco standing shyly by the door. "Who's that?" "This is Marco. He's going to stay with us tonight. Is that okay?" Emma studied Marco with the frank curiosity of childhood. "Do you like Frozen?" Marco blinked, caught off guard. I've never seen it." Emma's eyes went wide. "You've never seen Frozen? Mama, can we watch it?" "It's late, sweetie, maybe tomorrow. Let's get home and get you back to bed." Sarah thanked Mrs. Chen again, promised to tell her the full story later, and ushered both children across the hall to her apartment. She unlocked 3 separate locks. The building wasn't in a bad neighborhood, but it wasn't in a great one either, and they stepped inside. The apartment was small. The living room and kitchen were one open space. A tiny bathroom was off to the left, and the single bedroom to the right. Sarah slept on the pull-out couch. Emma had the bedroom. The furniture was second-hand but clean. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A few framed photos sat on the bookshelf. Sarah and Emma at the park, Sarah's mother who had passed 5 years ago, Emma's first day of kindergarten. "It's not much," Sarah said, suddenly self-conscious about bringing Marco here. He was used to wealth, to luxury. What must he think of this place? But Marco was looking around with something like wonder. "It's nice," he said softly. "It feels like a home." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again. "Yeah," she said. It does, doesn't it? Okay, Emma, bathroom, teeth, bed, you too, Marco. I'll find you something to sleep in. She dug through Emma's drawers and found a pair of sweatpants that might fit Marco and an oversized t-shirt. While the kids took turns in the bathroom, Sarah made up a bed for Marco on the couch with clean sheets and her spare pillow. When Marco emerged from the bathroom in his borrowed pajamas, his dark hair damp and messy, he looked even younger than before. Sarah's maternal instincts kicked into overdrive. All set? She asked. Marco nodded. Thank you, Miss Sarah, for everything. You're welcome, sweetheart. Get some sleep. She tucked Emma into bed, reading her 2 pages of their current book, Charlotte's Web, before her daughter's eyes drooped closed. Then Sarah returned to the living room. Marco was sitting on the edge of the couch, not lying down. You okay? Sarah asked. I don't know how to thank you, Marco said quietly. You're very kind. Kinder than most people. Most people would do the same thing. No, Marco said with a certainty that seemed too old for his years. They wouldn't. Most people see me and they only see my last name, what my family is, what we can do for them or to them. Sarah sat down beside him. Marco, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow I'm going to call your father, and whatever happens after that I can't control. But tonight, you're safe. Tonight, you get to just be a kid, okay? Marco nodded. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned against Sarah's shoulder. She put her arm around him, feeling his small body relax. My mama used to hug me like this, he whispered, before the accident. Tell me about her. She was beautiful, and she laughed a lot. She used to sneak me out of the house when the guards weren't looking. We'd go to the park or get ice cream. She said I needed to remember that there was more to life than... He trailed off. Then what? Then the family business. They sat like that for a long time, the apartment quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and the rain that had started up again. Eventually, Marco's breathing evened out. He'd fallen asleep against her shoulder. Carefully, Sarah laid him down on the couch and pulled the blanket up to his chin. In sleep, his face lost some of its tension. He looked like what he was, a small boy who needed love and safety. Sarah picked up the business card from her bag. Vincent Romano. Tomorrow she would call this number and return his son. But tonight, she'd given a lonely child a few hours of normalcy. She just hoped it wouldn't cost her everything. As she got ready for bed herself, pulling out the couch cushions to reveal the thin mattress underneath, Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hand trembled as she answered. Hello? A man's voice, deep and controlled but with an undercurrent of tension. Miss Mitchell, I believe you have something that belongs to me. Sarah's blood ran cold. How did he know her name? How did he get her number? She started. Tomorrow. Noon. Tony's diner. The voice wasn't threatening exactly, but it left no room for argument. We need to talk. Bring Marco. The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, her heart pounding. She looked at Marco, sleeping peacefully on her couch, and at her daughter's bedroom door. What had she gotten them into? Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay on the thin, pull-out mattress, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows from passing car headlights sweep across the water-stained plaster. Every sound made her jump. Footsteps in the hallway, a car door slamming on the street below, the building's ancient heating system clanking to life. Her mind raced with questions that had no good answers. How had Vincent Romano gotten her phone number? How did he know where Marco was? And more importantly, what was going to happen at noon? She turned her head to look at Marco, still sleeping peacefully on the couch a few feet away. In the dim light filtering through the blinds, he looked impossibly young. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and his breathing was soft and even. One hand was curled under his cheek, the other clutching the edge of the blanket. He looked like any other 8-year-old boy, vulnerable and innocent. But he wasn't just any boy. He was the son of Vincent Romano, a man whose name was whispered in certain circles, whose business interests were the subject of federal investigations and newspaper speculation. A man who had found Sarah within hours of her taking his son in. Sarah's phone sat on the small side table, dark and silent now, but feeling somehow threatening. She picked it up and looked at the call log. The number that had called her was blocked. Of course it was. She thought about calling the police. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. Let them handle it. But something stopped her. Partly the memory of Marco's face when those men had come into the diner, the pure fear in his eyes. And partly something else. A gut feeling that getting authorities involved would only make things worse for the boy. At 5:30, Sarah gave up on sleep. She untangled herself from the sheets and padded quietly to the kitchen, careful not to wake the children. She made coffee, strong and black, and stood at the window watching Brooklyn wake up. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving the streets washed clean. The sky was that pale gray that comes before dawn. A few early risers hurried down the sidewalk. A man in scrubs heading to the hospital, a woman walking 3 small dogs, a teenager delivering newspapers. Normal people living normal lives. Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm mug and tried to think clearly. She had maybe 6 hours before the meeting. She needed a plan, but every scenario she imagined ended badly. If she brought Marco to the diner, what would Vincent do? Would he be angry? Grateful? Would he blame her for taking Marco in or thank her? And what about after? Once Marco was back with his father, would that be the end of it? Or had Sarah made herself visible to dangerous people? Mama? Sarah turned to find Emma standing in the doorway of the bedroom, her blonde hair sticking up in all directions, her favorite stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. "Morning, baby," Sarah said softly, setting down her mug and holding out her arms. Emma shuffled over, still half asleep, and let Sarah pick her up. At 6, she was getting too big for this, but Sarah held her anyway, breathing in the little girl smell of her, strawberry shampoo and sleep. "Is the boy still here?" Emma whispered against Sarah's neck. "Yes, honey. His name is Marco." "Why is he here?" Sarah carried Emma to the couch and sat down, settling her daughter on her lap. "Remember how sometimes you feel lonely or sad and you just need a hug?" Emma nodded. "Well, Marco was feeling like that. Very lonely. So I'm helping him. Just for a little while. Until his mama comes." Sarah's heart squeezed. "His mama passed away, sweetheart, like Grandma did." Emma processed this with the straightforward acceptance of childhood. "That's sad. He must miss her a lot." "I think he does. Can I share my toys with him?" "That would be very kind." They sat together for a while, watching the sky lighten outside the window. Sarah felt Emma's breathing deepen as she dozed back off, secure in her mother's arms. These moments were what made everything worth it. The double shifts, the stress, the constant juggling of bills and responsibilities. Emma was her world. Around 6:30, Marco stirred on the couch. His eyes opened slowly, and for a moment he looked confused, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Then he saw Sarah and Emma, and something in his face relaxed. "Good morning," Sarah said quietly. "Did you sleep okay?" Marco sat up, running a hand through his messy hair. "Yes, thank you. Better than—" He trailed off. "Better than at home?" He nodded, looking guilty. "It's okay to say it," Sarah assured him. "Sometimes the place we live and the place we feel at home aren't the same thing." Marco absorbed this, his dark eyes serious. Then he noticed Emma. "Hi," he said shyly. Emma waved, suddenly bashful. "Hi, do you want to see my room? I have a dollhouse." "Emma, let Marco wake up first," Sarah said. But Marco was already standing. "I'd like to see it," he said. Emma wriggled out of Sarah's lap and took Marco's hand, leading him to the bedroom. Sarah followed, leaning against the doorframe as Emma showed Marco her treasures. The dollhouse that Sarah had found at a thrift store and repainted, the collection of library books stacked neatly on the shelf, the drawings taped to the walls. "This is from when we went to the aquarium," Emma explained, pointing to a picture of blue scribbles, "and what might have been fish. And this is Mama and me at the park. And this is our building." Marco studied each drawing carefully as if they were paintings in a museum. "You're a good artist," he said. Emma beamed. "Thank you. Do you like to draw?" "I don't know. I've never really tried." "Never?" Emma's eyes went wide. "You should try. It's fun. I can teach you." Sarah watched them, marveling at how easily children connected. There was no judgment, no awareness of the vast gulf between their circumstances. Emma didn't see the son of a crime boss. She just saw a boy who needed a friend. "Okay, you two," Sarah said. "Let's have some breakfast. Emma, can you show Marco where we keep the plates?" In the small kitchen, Sarah made pancakes from a box mix, nothing fancy, but Emma loved them. She let Marco help flip them, guiding his hand on the spatula. He was careful and precise, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. "Perfect," Sarah said when he successfully flipped a pancake. "You're a natural." A small smile crossed Marco's face. The first real smile Sarah had seen from him. They ate at the tiny table by the window, Emma chattering about school and her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, and her best friend, Jasmine. Marco listened intently, occasionally asking questions. Sarah noticed he had excellent manners. He waited until everyone was served before starting, said please and thank you, and kept his napkin on his lap. Where do you go to school? Emma asked, syrup on her chin. Marco's face fell slightly. I don't. I have tutors who come to the house. Don't you miss seeing other kids? I can't really. My papa says it's not safe for me to go to regular school. That's sad, Emma said matter-of-factly. School is fun, well, sometimes. Math is hard, but reading is good. And lunch is the best part. Sarah cleared her throat. Emma, why don't you and Marco watch some cartoons while I get ready? I need to go into work for a little while today. The lie tasted bitter, but she couldn't tell Emma the truth. Not yet. She left the children on the couch, Emma explaining the plot of her favorite show to Marco in great detail, and went to shower. The hot water helped ease some of the tension in her shoulders, but her mind kept circling back to the meeting. What would she say to Vincent Romano? How did you talk to someone like that? She had no experience with this world, no understanding of the rules or expectations. By 9 o'clock, Sarah had the children dressed. Marco was back in his own clothes, which had dried overnight but were wrinkled. Emma wore her favorite purple sweater and jeans. Sarah had called Mrs. Chen to ask if Emma could stay with her for a few hours. Is everything okay? Mrs. Chen asked, her weathered face creased with concern. It's complicated, Sarah admitted. I'll explain everything later, I promise. I just need you to watch Emma until I get back. Can you do that? Of course, but Sarah, if you're in trouble. I'm not. At least I don't think I am, I'm just helping someone. Mrs. Chen looked skeptical but agreed. Sarah hugged Emma tight, breathing in her strawberry scent. Be good for Mrs. Chen, okay? I'll be back soon. Okay, Mama, bye, Marco. Emma waved enthusiastically. Marco waved back, but Sarah could see the tension returning to his small shoulders. He knew what was coming. The subway ride to the diner felt endless. Sarah and Marco sat side by side on the orange plastic seats, surrounded by the Wednesday morning crowd. Commuters heading to work, students with backpacks, tourists consulting maps on their phones. The train swayed and rattled through the tunnels, the lights flickering occasionally. Are you scared? Marco asked quietly. A little, Sarah admitted. Are you? Yes. Papa will be angry. At you or at me. Both, maybe. He doesn't like it when things don't go according to plan. Sarah studied Marco's profile. The straight nose, the serious set of his mouth. Marco, does he hurt you? Marco looked shocked. No, never. Papa would never hurt me. He struggled to find the words. He keeps me in a cage. A nice cage with everything I could want, but still a cage. Sarah understood that feeling better than Marco probably realized. Different circumstances. Same sense of being trapped. They emerged from the subway at their stop and walked the 3 blocks to Tony's diner. The morning was cold but clear, the sky a brilliant blue. The diner looked different in daylight. Less atmospheric, more worn. The chrome trim that gleamed at night showed its age in the sun, and the vinyl booths visible through the windows were clearly patched in places. Sarah checked her watch. 11:45, 15 minutes early. Okay, she said, crouching down to Marco's level. Whatever happens in there, I want you to know I did what I thought was right. I'm not going to apologize for giving you a safe place for the night. Understand? Marco nodded, his dark eyes huge in his pale face. And Marco, your father loves you. I can tell, even without meeting him. People don't track down their children within hours unless they care deeply. I know he loves me, Marco said quietly. I just wish he knew how to show it. They entered the diner together. Tony looked up from the register, his eyes narrowing when he saw them. Sarah, your shift doesn't start until 4. I know, Tony. I'm here for a meeting. What kind of meeting? Before Sarah could answer, the door opened again. 3 men entered, and the atmosphere in the diner immediately changed. It was like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. The first man through the door was one Sarah recognized from last night, the bald one, with the soft voice. He held the door for the other 2. The second man was younger, maybe early 30s, with dark hair styled perfectly and an expensive-looking charcoal suit. He scanned the diner with sharp, assessing eyes, but it was the third man who commanded attention. Vincent Romano was not what Sarah expected. She'd built up an image in her mind based on movies and TV shows, someone brutish or overtly threatening. But Vincent was neither of these things. He was tall, probably 6'2", with a lean build that suggested he stayed in shape. His dark hair was graying at the temples, and he wore a navy suit that was clearly custom-tailored. His face was handsome in a weathered way. Strong jawline, straight nose, deep-set eyes that were almost black. But it was those eyes that told the real story. They were tired. Not sleepy tired, but bone-deep exhausted. The eyes of someone who carried too much weight for too long. Those eyes found Marco immediately, and Sarah watched a complicated series of emotions flash across Vincent's face. Relief, anger, fear, love, all in the space of a heartbeat. "Marco," Vincent said, and his voice was rougher than it had been on the phone. "Are you hurt?" Marco shook his head, pressing closer to Sarah's side. Vincent's gaze shifted to Sarah, and she had to fight the urge to step back. There was power in that look and intelligence and something dangerous just beneath the surface. "Miss Mitchell," he said, "thank you for taking care of my son." It wasn't what she expected. No threats, no accusations, just simple gratitude. "He needed help," Sarah said, finding her voice. "I couldn't just leave him in the rain." "No," Vincent agreed. "I suppose you couldn't." He looked around the diner, at Tony frozen behind the register, at the handful of customers who were trying very hard to look like they weren't watching. "Is there somewhere we can talk? Somewhere private?" Tony found his voice. "You can use the office, in the back." "Thank you." Vincent gestured toward the back of the diner. Sarah hesitated, then felt Marco's small hand slip into hers. She squeezed it gently and followed Vincent, the two other men trailing behind them. The office was tiny, barely big enough for Tony's cluttered desk and a few filing cabinets. It smelled like coffee and old paper. Vincent closed the door behind them, and suddenly the space felt even smaller. "Marco, wait outside with Dominic and Paul," Vincent said quietly. "But Papa, outside, now." Marco looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading. She nodded. "It's okay. I'll be right here." Reluctantly, Marco left with the two men. Through the small window in the door, Sarah could see them standing guard in the hallway. Vincent waited until the door closed before speaking. "I need you to understand something, Miss Mitchell. When Marco disappeared yesterday, I had 200 people looking for him. Every contact I have, every resource at my disposal. I was prepared to tear this city apart to find him." Sarah's throat went dry. "I wasn't hiding him. Vincent held up a hand. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm explaining so you understand the magnitude of what happened. My son is the most important thing in my life, the only thing that truly matters, and he was missing for 16 hours. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and she meant it. "I should have called immediately, but he was so scared and I thought one night wouldn't hurt." "Why?" Vincent asked, leaning against the desk. "Why risk getting involved? You had to know who I was once you saw my name." "I didn't actually. Not until I looked you up." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Vincent's face. "And after you looked me up? After you knew what I was?" "I saw a lonely little boy who needed someone to care," Sarah said simply. "That mattered more than your last name." Vincent studied her for a long moment. Sarah forced herself to meet his gaze, even though every instinct told her to look away. "You're either very brave or very foolish," Vincent finally said. "I haven't decided which." "Maybe both." That definitely was amusement now. "Tell me what happened. From the beginning." Sarah did. She told him about seeing Marco on the bench, about bringing him inside, about the two men who came looking, about taking Marco home. She left nothing out, including Marco's comments about being lonely and trapped. Vincent listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "He said he felt like he was in a cage," Vincent finally said, his voice low. "Is that accurate?" Sarah hesitated. This was dangerous ground. "He said you keep him safe, protected, but that he doesn't have friends or normal experiences." "No, he doesn't. Because normal experiences get children killed in my world." Vincent's hands clenched into fists, then slowly relaxed. His mother understood that. She accepted the restrictions, the security, because she knew what was at stake. Marco mentioned his mother. He said she died in an accident. Pain crossed Vincent's face, raw and unguarded. 2 years ago, car accident on the FDR Drive. A drunk driver crossed the median. She died instantly. Marco was with her. He survived with barely a scratch. "Oh God," Sarah breathed. "That's horrible." Since then, Marco has been different, withdrawn. His therapist says he's depressed. But what can I do? The world I live in is dangerous. I can't let him go to regular school where anyone could get to him. I can't let him have friends whose families I haven't thoroughly investigated. I can't. He stopped, running a hand over his face. I can't give him a normal childhood because normal doesn't exist for children like him. Sarah heard the frustration and pain in his voice. This wasn't a monster. This was a father who was terrified of losing his son the way he'd lost his wife. Mr. Romano. Vincent, he interrupted. If we're going to have this conversation, you should call me Vincent. Vincent, Sarah tried again. I understand wanting to keep Marco safe, but safety isn't just physical. He needs emotional security too. Connection, love, experiences that help him grow. You don't think I love him? Vincent's voice was sharp. I think you love him desperately. I think that's obvious. But Marco needs to feel it, not just know it intellectually. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. My wife used to say something similar. She said I was so focused on keeping Marco alive that I was forgetting to let him live. She sounds like she was wise. She was. She balanced me, made me better. Without her, he trailed off, then seemed to shake himself. Anyway, you've done me a service, whether you intended to or not. Marco is safe, and that's what matters. Now, the question is what happens next. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. What do you mean? You've involved yourself in my life, Miss Mitchell. Sarah, that's not something that can be undone. People will have seen Marco with you. Questions will be asked. I'll just tell them the truth, that I found a lost child and helped him. And what will you say when they ask why you didn't call the police? Sarah hadn't thought of that. I'll say I was planning to, but you called first. And when they ask how I got your number, your address, the questions kept coming, each one highlighting how unprepared Sarah was for this situation. I don't know, she admitted. Vincent sighed. This is why I tell Marco the world is complicated, because it is. Every action has consequences, ripples that spread further than we intend. So what do? Vincent started, but stopped when his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his expression darkened. Excuse me a moment, he answered, speaking in rapid Italian. Sarah didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Urgent, concerned. The conversation lasted less than a minute. When Vincent hung up, he looked troubled. There's been a complication, he said. Before he could elaborate, there was a sharp knock on the door. Paul, the lean one, stuck his head in. Boss, we've got a situation. What kind of situation? Federal. 2 suits just walked into the diner. They're asking for Miss Mitchell. Sarah's heart stopped. Federal, like FBI? That would be my guess, Vincent said, his jaw tight. He looked at Sarah. Have you had any contact with federal law enforcement? No, never. I don't understand. Think. Anything unusual in the past few weeks? Any questions about the neighborhood, about people you know? Sarah shook her head frantically. Nothing. I work 2 jobs and take care of my daughter. That's my life. Vincent's phone buzzed again. He looked at it and cursed softly in Italian. They're asking to speak with both of us. Together. Why would they want to talk to me? Sarah asked, fear creeping up her spine. Because you spent last night with my son. Because you're connected to me now, even if you didn't mean to be. Vincent straightened his jacket, his expression hardening into something unreadable. Okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to go out there and talk to them. You're going to tell them exactly what you told me. You found a lost child and helped him. Nothing more, nothing less. But, Sarah, Vincent looked at her intently. I need you to trust me right now. Can you do that? Trust him. She'd known him for all of 10 minutes. He was everything her instincts told her to avoid. But when she looked in his eyes, she didn't see a criminal. She saw a father trying to protect his child. Okay, she whispered. They left the office together. In the diner, 2 people in professional attire were waiting. A woman in her 40s with short brown hair and a gray pantsuit, and a man in his 50s with silver hair and tired eyes. They had that unmistakable federal agent look. Professional, alert, radiating authority. Marco was sitting in a booth with Dominic and Paul, his face pale. When he saw Sarah and his father emerge, relief flooded his features. Mr. Romano, the woman said, her voice crisp and professional. I'm Special Agent Marquez, FBI. This is Special Agent Chen. We'd like to speak with you and Miss Mitchell. About what? Vincent asked, his tone neutral. About your son's disappearance yesterday and his time with Miss Mitchell. My son wasn't missing. He went for a walk and got turned around. Miss Mitchell kindly helped him. That's one version, Agent Marquez said. We'd like to hear Miss Mitchell's version. Alone, if possible. Vincent looked at Sarah. You don't have to speak to them without a lawyer present. I haven't done anything wrong, Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. I'll talk to them. The agents led her to a different booth, away from Vincent and Marco. Agent Chen pulled out a small notebook while Agent Marquez did the talking. Miss Mitchell, we've been monitoring Mr. Romano as part of an ongoing investigation, she began. Yesterday evening his son went missing. This morning you and the boy arrived at this diner together. Can you explain that? Sarah did, repeating the same story she'd told Vincent. As she spoke, she watched the agents' faces, trying to read their expressions. Agent Marquez remained neutral, but Agent Chen occasionally jotted notes. And you didn't think to call the police when you found an unattended minor? Marquez asked. I was going to, Sarah said, but he was scared. I thought one night wouldn't matter. Scared of what? Of going back home. Did he say he was being mistreated? No, he said he was lonely. Agent Marquez exchanged a look with her partner. Miss Mitchell, do you know who Vincent Romano is? I know what the internet says about him. And yet you brought his son into your home, spent the night with him, brought him here this morning. That's quite a lot of contact with the Romano family. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. I was helping a child, that's all. Or, Agent Marquez suggested, you saw an opportunity. Vincent Romano is a wealthy man. His son would be worth a significant amount to the right people. It took Sarah a moment to understand what the agent was implying. When she did, anger flooded through her. Are you suggesting I was going to ransom him? I work 2 minimum wage jobs to support my daughter. I can barely afford groceries. The last thing I do is get involved in something illegal. We're just exploring all possibilities, Agent Chen said, his voice gentler than his partner's. Well, explore a different possibility, Sarah said hotly. The possibility that I'm exactly who I say I am. Someone who saw a child in need and helped him. Not everyone has ulterior motives. Agent Marquez studied her for a long moment. All right, Miss Mitchell. Let's say I believe you. The problem is, you're now connected to Vincent Romano. You're on our radar and by extension on the radar of his associates and his enemies. Do you understand what that means? No, Sarah admitted. It means your life just got a lot more complicated. It means we'll be watching you. It means people in Romano's world will be curious about who you are and what you mean to him. I don't mean anything to him. I'm just someone who helped his kid. In my experience, Agent Marquez said, there's no such thing as just anything when it comes to people like Vincent Romano. Every connection matters. Every relationship has weight. Sarah felt like she was drowning. What do you want from me? The agents exchanged another look. Agent Chen leaned forward. We want you to tell us if you see or hear anything unusual. If Romano contacts you again. If anyone associated with him reaches out. You want me to spy on him. We want you to be our eyes and ears. Agent Marquez corrected. You've been given access to Romano's inner circle, even if accidentally. That's valuable. No, Sarah said immediately. Absolutely not. I'm not getting involved in whatever investigation you're running. You're already involved, Agent Marquez pointed out. Then I'm uninvolving myself. I helped a lost child. That's the end of the story. Agent Marquez pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Think about it. You know where to reach us if you change your mind, or if you need help. I won't need help, Sarah said, standing up. Her legs felt shaky, but she kept her voice firm. Are we done here? For now, Agent Marquez said. But Miss Mitchell? Be careful. Vincent Romano may seem charming, even sympathetic, but he's a dangerous man. People around him have a tendency to get hurt. Sarah walked back to where Vincent was waiting with Marco. The boy immediately reached for her hand. Are you okay? Vincent asked quietly. They wanted me to inform on you, Sarah said, her voice low. I said no. Something shifted in Vincent's expression. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I'm not going to spy on someone who hasn't done anything to me. Vincent studied her face. You're an interesting woman, Sarah Mitchell. I'm really not. I'm just trying to do the right thing. That's exactly what makes you interesting. Before Sarah could respond, Marco tugged on her hand. Sarah? Am I going to see you again? Sarah's heart broke at the hope in his voice. She looked at Vincent, uncertain. I think that's up to your father, sweetheart. Vincent was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing options. Then he said, Marco, would you like Sarah to visit sometimes? Maybe have dinner with us? Marco's face lit up. Really, Papa? Really? If Sarah agrees. Sarah knew she should say no. She should walk away right now. Go back to her simple life. Forget this whole thing happened. Getting involved with the Romano family would only bring complications she couldn't afford. But when she looked at Marco's hopeful face, at the first real joy she'd seen from him, she couldn't say no. I'd like that, she said. Vincent nodded slowly. Good. Paul will get your contact information. We'll arrange something soon." As they prepared to leave, Tony approached cautiously. "Sarah, is everything okay?" "Yes, Tony. Sorry for the disruption. You're not coming back to work today, are you?" It wasn't really a question. Sarah shook her head. "No, I need to get home to Emma." "Emma?" Vincent asked. "My daughter. She's 6. "Ah." Vincent reached into his jacket and pulled out a wallet. He extracted several bills and handed them to her. "For your trouble, and for missing work." Sarah looked at the money. It was at least $500. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can. Consider it payment for childcare services." "It's too much." "It's not nearly enough for what you did," Vincent said seriously. "You gave my son something I couldn't. A night of peace. That's priceless." Sarah reluctantly pocketed the money. It would cover Emma's medications for 2 months. She couldn't afford pride. "Thank you," she whispered. Vincent placed a hand on Marco's shoulder. "Say goodbye, Marco." "Bye, Sarah," Marco said, hugging her suddenly. "Thank you for the sandwich and the pancakes and for being nice to me." Sarah hugged him back, blinking away tears. "You're welcome, sweetheart. Be good for your papa, okay?" "I will." The Romano family left. Vincent, Marco, and the 2 bodyguards piling into the black SUV outside. Sarah watched them drive away, feeling like she'd just stepped off a roller coaster. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Vincent Romano. I meant what I said about dinner. Marco would like you and your daughter to visit this Saturday. My driver will pick you up at 5 p.m. Please let me know if this works for you." Sarah stared at the message. This was her last chance to back out, to return to her normal life. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Marco's face, lonely and hopeful and desperate for connection. She typed back, "Saturday at 5 works. Thank you." She didn't see the agents in the car across the street taking photos. She didn't see the other car 2 blocks down, where men who worked for Vincent's rivals were also taking notes. She was too focused on getting home to Emma, on processing everything that had just happened. Sarah Mitchell had no idea that her simple act of kindness had just set off a chain reaction that would change her life forever, but she was about to find out. The rest of Wednesday and all of Thursday passed in a blur. Sarah worked her shifts at both jobs, but her mind kept drifting to Marco's face, to Vincent's tired eyes, to the federal agent's warnings. She told Mrs. Chen a simplified version of events, that she'd helped a lost child whose wealthy father was very grateful. It wasn't exactly a lie, just an incomplete truth. Emma, however, wouldn't stop talking about Marco. "Do you think he has lots of toys?" she asked Thursday night as Sarah tucked her into bed. "He probably has a huge room, and a big TV. Maybe he has a treehouse." "I don't know, baby," Sarah said, smoothing Emma's blonde hair back from her forehead. "We'll find out on Saturday. Are you nervous, Mama?" Sarah hesitated. She'd been trying not to show her anxiety, but Emma was perceptive. "A little bit. It's a very fancy house, I think. I want to make sure we make a good impression." "Marco already likes us," Emma said matter-of-factly. "He told me I was nice, and he liked my drawings." "You're right. He does like us." "Then we don't have to be nervous. We're just visiting a friend." Sarah wished she could see it that simply, but she was acutely aware that this wasn't just a play date. This was entering a world she didn't understand, with rules she didn't know, surrounded by dangers she couldn't see. Friday morning, Sarah received another text from Vincent's number. "My driver Michael will arrive at 4:45 p.m. tomorrow. He drives a black Mercedes. Please be ready. Dress code is casual. This is dinner at home, not a formal event." Marco is very excited. Sarah read the message 3 times, parsing every word for hidden meaning. Casual probably meant something different in Vincent's world than in hers. She went through her closet that evening, suddenly painfully aware of how worn most of her clothes were. She finally settled on a navy blue dress she'd bought for a job interview 2 years ago. Simple, modest, appropriate. For Emma, she chose a pretty pink dress with white flowers that her mother had sent last Christmas. Saturday arrived with crisp, clear weather. Sarah spent the morning cleaning their apartment even though no one would see it, as if preparing for the evening ahead. She gave Emma lunch at noon, then started getting them both ready at 3 o'clock. "Why are we getting ready so early?" Emma asked, as Sarah carefully braided her hair. "Because I want to make sure we look nice and we're not rushing." "You're definitely nervous," Emma observed. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that?" Emma giggled. At exactly 4:45 p.m., Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. "Outside whenever you're ready. No rush." Sarah took a deep breath, checked her reflection one last time and grabbed Emma's hand. Ready, baby? Ready. The black Mercedes was parked in front of their building, gleaming in the afternoon sun. A man in his 50s stepped out of the driver's seat as they approached. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and a warm smile. Miss Mitchell, I'm Michael, and you must be Emma. He opened the back door for them. Please, make yourselves comfortable. The interior of the car was luxurious. Leather seats, tinted windows, and enough legroom that Sarah could actually stretch out. Classical music played softly from the speakers. This is fancy, Emma whispered loudly. Michael chuckled from the front seat. Mr. Romano believes in traveling comfortably. We have about a 30-minute drive. Please help yourselves to water or juice in the console. As they drove through Brooklyn and into a more affluent neighborhood, Sarah watched the scenery change. The buildings grew larger, the streets cleaner, the cars more expensive. They eventually turned onto a tree-lined street in Brooklyn Heights, where historic brownstones sat behind wrought iron gates. Michael pulled up to a 4-story brownstone that looked like it had been meticulously restored. Warm light glowed from the windows, and Sarah could see intricate molding and high ceilings through the glass. Here we are, Michael announced, coming around to open their door. Sarah's hands were sweating. This house probably cost more than she'd earn in her entire lifetime. She took Emma's hand and approached the front door, which opened before they could knock. Vincent stood in the doorway, and Sarah was momentarily taken aback. She'd only seen him in a suit before, projecting power and control. Now he wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, and he looked younger, somehow, more approachable. Sarah, Emma, welcome. His voice was warm. Please come in. They stepped into a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that probably cost more than Sarah's car. But before she could take in the details, a small figure came racing down the curved staircase. Sarah! Emma! Marco's face was bright with excitement. He looked different, too. He wore jeans and a red sweater, and his hair was slightly messy, making him look like a regular kid. You came. Of course we came, Sarah said, smiling. We promised, didn't we? Marco nodded enthusiastically, then looked at Emma. Do you want to see my room? I have something to show you. Emma looked at Sarah for permission. Can I, Mama? Sure, baby. But mind your manners. The children ran off together, their laughter echoing through the house. Sarah found herself alone with Vincent in the grand foyer. Your home is beautiful, she said, because she had to say something. Thank you. It's been in my family for 3 generations. Vincent gestured toward a doorway. Come, I'll show you around while the children play. Dinner won't be ready for another hour. He led her through the house, and Sarah tried not to gawk. Every room was beautifully appointed with antiques and artwork, a formal living room with silk curtains, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a dining room with a table that could seat 20. But Vincent didn't linger in these formal spaces. Instead, he took her to a comfortable family room at the back of the house. This room felt lived in. There was a large, slightly worn leather couch, a fireplace with framed photos on the mantel, and French doors that opened onto a small garden. This is where Marco and I spend most of our time, Vincent explained. The rest of the house is, well, it's for show mostly. Family tradition and all that. Sarah moved to the mantel, looking at the photographs. Most were of Marco at various ages, as a baby, a toddler, a young boy. But there were others too. A wedding photo of Vincent and a stunning dark-haired woman, both of them young and radiant. The same woman holding baby Marco, her face glowing with love. Marco and his mother at what looked like a beach, both laughing at the camera. Your wife was beautiful, Sarah said softly. Inside and out, Vincent replied, coming to stand beside her. He picked up the beach photo. This was taken 6 months before she died. We'd gone to the Hamptons for the weekend. Marco built sandcastles for hours while Elena read books and reminded me to reapply sunscreen. He smiled at the memory, but his eyes were sad. She was always trying to get us to slow down, to enjoy the moment. I wish I'd listened more. I lost my mother 5 years ago, Sarah said. Cancer. Sometimes I'll reach for my phone to call her before I remember she's gone. The grief doesn't get smaller. You just grow around it. Vincent looked at her with understanding. Yes, exactly that. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. 2 people bonded by loss. Can I ask you something? Sarah said hesitantly. Of course. That day at the diner, when the FBI agents talked to me, they said people around you tend to get hurt. Should I be worried? Should I be worried about Emma? Vincent's expression hardened slightly. I won't lie to you, Sarah. My world has dangers, but I would never let those dangers touch you or your daughter. The moment you helped Marco, you came under my protection. No one will harm you. And what does that protection cost? Nothing. I don't operate on debts and favors. You did something kind for my son. That matters to me. Sarah studied his face, trying to read the truth there. She saw sincerity, but also something else. A warning maybe, or a promise. This was a man who kept his word, for better or worse. Okay, she said finally. I believe you. Good. Now shall we check on the children before they destroy Marco's room? They climbed the stairs to the third floor where Marco's room took up half the space. It was every child's dream. A huge bed shaped like a race car, shelves filled with toys and books, a flat-screen TV, a desk with a high-end computer. But Sarah noticed something odd. Despite all the toys, none of them looked well used. The books were pristine. The games were still in their packaging. Marco and Emma were sitting on the floor, drawing on a large sketch pad. Emma was explaining her technique with great seriousness while Marco listened, his face intent. You have to use the side of the crayon for shading, see? Emma demonstrated. And then you can add details with the point. Like this? Marco tried, his tongue poking out in concentration. Perfect, you're really good at this. Vincent leaned close to Sarah's ear. I've bought him every toy imaginable. This is the happiest I've seen him in months. Sarah understood. Marco didn't need more things. He needed connection, normalcy, a friend who saw him as just another kid. Marco, Vincent called. Time to wash up for dinner. The children bounded to their feet. Can Emma sit next to me? Marco asked. Of course. They all made their way back downstairs to a smaller, more intimate dining room. The table was set for 4, and Sarah noticed with relief that it wasn't overly formal. Nice dishes, but not intimidating. A woman in her 60s appeared from what must be the kitchen. She had warm brown skin, silver hair pulled into a neat bun, and a kind smile. This is Rosa, Vincent introduced. She's been with our family for 20 years. She practically raised Marco. It's nice to meet you, Sarah said. And you, dear. I've heard a lot about you from young Marco. Rosa smiled at Emma. And this must be Emma. Marco says you're a very good artist. Emma beamed. Thank you. Dinner will be ready in just a few minutes, Rosa said, disappearing back into the kitchen. They sat down, Emma next to Marco as promised, Sarah and Vincent across from each other. Rosa brought out the first course, a simple salad with homemade vinaigrette. So, Emma, Vincent said as they began eating, your mother tells me you're 6. What grade are you in? 1st grade, Emma said proudly. My teacher is Mrs. Rodriguez. She's really nice. We're learning about butterflies. Butterflies? That sounds interesting. Did you know they start as caterpillars? And they make a chrysalis, not a cocoon, that's moths, and then they transform. It's called metamorphosis. I did know that, but you explained it very well. Emma chattered happily throughout the meal, and Sarah was grateful. Her daughter's ease helped dissolve some of the tension Sarah felt. Marco gradually opened up too, telling them about his tutors and his favorite subjects. I like history, he said, especially about ancient Rome. Did you know they had an emperor who was only 16 years old? I didn't know that, Emma said. 16 is pretty old, though. That's like way older than us. The adults smiled at this perspective. Rosa brought out the main course, pasta with a rich tomato sauce, garlic bread, and roasted vegetables. It smelled incredible. Rosa makes the best pasta in New York, Marco declared. Even better than restaurants. You're going to make me blush, Rosa said, but she looked pleased. As they ate, Sarah found herself relaxing. Despite the elegant setting, despite the weight of Vincent's reputation, this felt like dinner, a normal family meal, filled with conversation and laughter. After dinner, Vincent suggested they have dessert in the garden. It was cold, but he had outdoor heaters set up, and the space was magical. String lights hung overhead, and a small fountain burbled in the corner. Rosa brought out tiramisu and hot chocolate. Mama, this is the best day, Emma whispered, leaning against Sarah's side. I'm glad, baby. Marco and Emma ran around the garden, playing some elaborate game they'd invented. Sarah and Vincent watched from the warmth of the heaters. Thank you for coming, Vincent said. I know this must be strange for you. It is, Sarah admitted. But I'm glad we came. Marco seems happy. He does, doesn't he? Vincent's voice was thick with emotion. I haven't seen him like this since Elena died. I'd forgotten what his real laugh sounded like. He needs this. Connection. Friendship. I know. But how do I give him that while keeping him safe? Sarah turned to face Vincent. I don't have the answers. But maybe the question isn't how to keep him perfectly safe. Maybe it's how to let him live while being as safe as possible. There's a difference. Vincent was quiet, considering this. That's what Elena used to say. She said I couldn't lock Marco away from the world no matter how much I wanted to. She was right. How do you do it? Vincent asked suddenly. You're a single mother, working 2 jobs. Your daughter has health issues. How do you not live in constant fear? Sarah thought about this. I do live in fear. Every day. I'm terrified Emma will have an asthma attack when I'm not there. I'm scared I'll lose one of my jobs and won't be able to afford her medicine. I'm afraid I'm not enough, that I'm failing her. But you keep going, because the alternative is to let fear win, and I won't give it that power. I choose to trust that I'm doing my best, that love matters more than perfection. Vincent looked at her with something like wonder. You're stronger than you know. I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. He smiled at that. Maybe strength and stubborn are the same thing. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of Rosa's garden herbs and the distant sounds of the city. Sarah, Vincent said eventually, I want to make you an offer, and I want you to think about it carefully before answering. Sarah's stomach tightened. What kind of offer? I'd like to hire you. Not as an employee exactly. As a companion for Marco. Someone who can spend time with him, give him normal experiences, be a positive influence. Vincent, I already have 2 jobs. I'd pay you enough that you could quit both. You could focus on being there for Emma and spend a few days a week with Marco. Give him the attention he needs. Sarah's mind reeled. The financial security he was offering would change her life. No more double shifts. No more choosing between Emma's medicine and groceries. No more worn-out shoes and sleepless nights. But at what cost? I can't, she said quietly. I can't take money from you like that. It feels wrong. Why? You'd be providing a service, a valuable one, because it would make our relationship transactional. Marco doesn't need a paid companion. He needs genuine care. If I start taking money from you, it changes everything. Vincent studied her face. Most people would jump at this opportunity. I'm not most people. No, he agreed. You're certainly not. Before either of them could say more, Marco ran up, Emma trailing behind. Papa, can Emma come back next week, please? Vincent looked at Sarah. That's up to Sarah and Emma. Can we, Mama? Emma asked. Please? Sarah saw the hope on both children's faces. Despite her reservations, despite the federal agent's warnings, despite every rational instinct telling her to walk away, she couldn't say no. Yes, she said. We can come back. The children cheered, high-fiving each other. Vincent's expression was unreadable, but Sarah thought she saw relief in his eyes. They stayed for another hour, the children playing until Emma started yawning. Finally, Sarah said they needed to go home. It was a school night, and Emma needed sleep. Michael drove them back through the quiet streets. Emma fell asleep in the car, her head on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah stared out the window, watching the city slide past, and wondered what she'd just committed herself to. When they arrived at their building, Vincent was there. He'd ridden with them, sitting in the front seat with Michael. I'll walk you up, he said. It wasn't a question. Sarah wanted to protest, but she was carrying Emma, and Vincent took her bag without asking. They climbed the 3 flights in silence. At her door, Vincent waited while Sarah unlocked it. She carried Emma straight to bed, tucking her in without waking her. When she returned to the living room, Vincent was still there, looking at the photos on her refrigerator. You have a beautiful life, he said quietly. Simple, maybe, but full of love. We do okay? Vincent turned to face her. Sarah, I need you to understand something. The offer I made tonight, I meant it. But whether you take it or not, you're under my protection now. If you need anything, if anyone threatens you, if those FBI agents come back, you call me. Understood? Sarah nodded, too tired to argue. Good. Vincent headed for the door, then paused. Marco asked me something tonight, after you agreed to come back next week. What did he ask? He asked if you could be his friend, not his babysitter or his caretaker. His friend. Vincent's voice was rough with emotion. I told him yes. But I'm asking you the same thing. Can you be his friend? Can you care about him without obligation? Sarah met his eyes. I already do, Vincent. That's the problem. Why is that a problem? Because caring makes you vulnerable. And I'm already vulnerable enough. Vincent nodded slowly. We're all vulnerable, Sarah. The trick is finding people who won't exploit it. After he left, Sarah lay awake in the darkness of her apartment, listening to Emma's soft breathing from the bedroom. She thought about Marco's laughter, Vincent's tired eyes, the weight of stepping into a world she didn't understand. She'd crossed a line tonight. There was no going back to her simple life now. The question was whether she'd regret it. Her phone buzzed with a text. Vincent, thank you for tonight. Marco hasn't stopped smiling. Neither have I. Sarah stared at the message for a long time before responding. Same here. See you next week. She set down her phone and closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she let herself imagine that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But in the darkness outside, a car sat watching her building. Inside were Agent Marquez and Agent Chen, noting the time Vincent Romano left, documenting yet another connection between him and Sarah Mitchell. And 2 blocks away, in another car, men who worked for Vincent's rivals were making their own notes, their own plans. Sarah had no idea that her simple act of kindness was rippling outward, creating waves that would soon crash over all of them. But she was about to learn. 6 months passed like a dream. Saturday dinners became tradition. Emma and Marco grew inseparable, video calling between visits, planning adventures. Sarah watched Marco transform, from the quiet, withdrawn boy on the bench to someone who laughed freely and talked about his dreams. Vincent changed too. He started attending Marco's tutoring sessions, eating breakfast with his son, being present instead of just protective. Sarah saw glimpses of the man he'd been before grief hardened him. The FBI eventually backed off, finding no evidence Sarah was involved in anything illegal. The rival families, seeing Vincent's happiness, chose to leave things alone. Sometimes peace was smarter than conflict. One evening in May, as spring bloomed in Brooklyn, they gathered in Vincent's garden. Marco and Emma chased fireflies while Rosa brought out lemonade. I enrolled Marco in school, Vincent said quietly. Starting in September. Real school, with other kids. Sarah's eyes widened. Vincent, that's wonderful. It terrifies me. But you were right. Safety isn't just physical, he needs to live. He paused. Thank you, Sarah, for seeing him when no one else did. Thank you for letting me in. Marco ran up, breathless and happy. Sarah, look, I caught one. He opened his hand slightly, revealing the gentle glow. Make a wish, Sarah whispered. Marco closed his eyes, smiled, and released the firefly into the darkening sky. Some wishes, Sarah realized, were already coming true. They'd found something unexpected, not a fairy tale, but something better. They'd found home.